Chapter 1, Moving to the Old House. On a cool, breezy autumn morning, Sarah and her family moved into an old house on the outskirts of town. The house was perched on a small hill, surrounded by a grove of large trees whose leaves were slowly falling to the ground, giving the scene a sense of isolation and stillness. The house, built of red brick and stone, had a mysterious aura that you could feel as you approached it. Its tall windows looked out into the distant horizon, while its large gate creaked with every gust of wind. The house was not just an old building, it had a long history that dated back hundreds of years. Sarah's father saw it as an opportunity not to be missed. Its price was tempting, but the townspeople whispered about it, warning the family. They said the house had a dark history, and that mysterious things had happened inside it years ago. But Sarah, 15 years old, paid no attention to such talk. She was excited to explore the new place and the many rooms that had yet to be discovered. As she entered the house, the only sound that filled the place was the sound of her footsteps on the worn wooden floor. The smell of dust filled the air, giving the house a sense of antiquity, as if time had stopped here. Sarah decided to start her tour in the basement, where old boxes and belongings left behind by the previous owners of the house were piled high. As she was exploring, she found a large mirror hidden behind a pile of dusty boxes. The mirror was decorated with strange, intricate engravings that intertwined with each other like an old spider web. It felt strange to her. She felt a strange desire to touch it, but hesitated, as a sudden shiver came over her, as if she was not alone in the place. Chapter 2, The First Reflection. After carefully cleaning the mirror and placing it in her room, Sarah began to feel that something was wrong. She stood in front of it and contemplated her reflection, but she couldn't shake the strange feeling that crept into her every time she stared at the glass for a long time. It was a slight feeling at first, as if there were shadows moving in the background. One night, while combing her long hair in front of the mirror, she noticed something that was not familiar. Her reflection in the mirror seemed to be watching her warily. Her eyes had a strange look, as if someone else was hiding behind them. She felt a shiver run through her entire body. She took a quick breath, then stepped back from the mirror. She told herself that what she saw was just an illusion, the result of exhaustion and stress after moving to a new house. Chapter 3, The Mysterious Woman's Dreams. It wasn't until several days later that Sarah began to have disturbing dreams repeatedly. Every night, she would see the same strange woman in the mirror, wearing old clothes from the 19th century. She would call Sarah's name in a soft voice, but her eyes were filled with sadness, which made her feel afraid. One night, the woman came closer than usual. She was wearing a dirty gray dress and a small black hat, and her face was alarmingly pale. Sarah whispered, "Who are you?" But the woman didn't answer. She just whispered as she approached, "I'm trapped. Help me." Sarah suddenly woke up, sweating profusely, her heart beating rapidly. These dreams weren't just ordinary nightmares, she felt like they carried a message. Chapter 4, Searching for the Truth. Sarah could no longer ignore the recurring dreams, and decided to research the history of the house and the mysterious mirror. She went to the old city library, whose shelves were covered with old, dusty books. After hours of searching through the worn papers, she found old records talking about the house and its previous owners. Layla mysteriously disappeared in the late 19th century, and no one ever found her body. Strangely, the mirror found in the basement was part of her personal belongings, and it is said that she used it in magical rituals. Chapter 5: Warning from the Past. In the days after she discovered the history of the house, Sarah began to receive strange signs. Messages would appear on the mirror glass, written in faint, barely legible handwriting, saying, "Stay away." Sometimes she would see her reflection in the mirror crying, for no apparent reason. The strange incidents in the house increased, doors opened and closed by themselves. And mysterious sounds were heard at night from upstairs, as if someone was walking quietly in the corridors. Sarah visited an old woman in the neighborhood, who knew a lot about the history of the area. The old woman sat talking about ancient legends, and said that Layla's spirit might be trapped inside the mirror. And that the mirror itself had a strange power that made anyone who looked at it for a long time vulnerable to control. Chapter 6: Attempts to Communicate. Sarah realized that the woman she saw in the mirror was not just a passing ghost, but might be a living person who wanted to communicate with her. One night, she decided to try to talk to the woman herself. Sarah lit candles around the mirror and sat on the floor, contemplating her reflection. After a few minutes of silence, the woman appeared again in the mirror, but this time she was angry. Chapter 7: Other Mirrors. After that night when Sarah tried to communicate with the woman, things began to get unexpectedly out of control. These strange phenomena were no longer confined to the large mirror in her room, but began to spread to all the mirrors in the house. Every time Sarah passed a mirror, whether in the bathroom or the hallway, she saw blurry, unfamiliar reflections. Strange faces would appear for seconds and then disappear, as if the entire house was gripped by something mysterious. Sometimes she saw the faces of children, sometimes the faces of adults who seemed trapped inside the glass. But the worst thing was when she saw a different reflection of herself. Her own reflection looked pale and tired. But the strangest thing was that her eyes in the mirror held an expression that didn't belong to her. She felt as if those mirrors weren't just reflective surfaces, but portals to another place, a place filled with mystery and fear. Chapter 8: Revealing the Ritual. Driven by growing fear, Sarah returned to searching for any information that might help her understand what was happening. As she wandered around the house, she entered the abandoned upper rooms that she rarely dared to explore. In one of the rooms, she found a small wooden box covered in a thick layer of dust. Upon opening the box, she found an old book written in a strange language. But some of the pages had drawings and symbols that she was able to decipher some of their meanings. The pages referred to ancient magical rituals, talking about trapping spirits inside mirrors through complex rituals. There were clear warnings in the book that tampering with these rituals could lead to the release of spirits, but they might not always be peaceful spirits. Sarah felt that Layla had been trapped in the mirror as a result of an ancient ritual, and that the mirror was the key to everything that was happening. Chapter 9: The Ritual of Liberation. Driven by a sense of responsibility and fear of the possible consequences, Sarah decided that she would not run away from the confrontation. If Layla's soul was trapped and looking for a way out, she had to complete the ritual and free it. She gathered everything she thought was necessary: old candles, symbols engraved on pieces of wood, and a strange black stone she found in the basement with the mirror. On a quiet moonlit night, Sarah sat in front of the mirror, ready to perform the ritual. She recited the phrases written in the book in a quiet voice, and as she progressed through the ritual, the mirror began to glow a strange, dull color. Suddenly, the room began to shake gently, as if something invisible was moving in the air. The lights began to flicker and the wind began to blow through the open window, while the mirror shone even more intensely. As she was about to finish the ritual, Sarah heard a loud scream coming from inside the mirror, as if a long-trapped soul had been released. She stepped back and fell to the floor, unconscious from terror and exhaustion. Chapter 10, Conclusion. When Sarah woke up, the room was engulfed in an eerie silence. She took a deep breath as she tried to collect herself. Everything seemed unusually quiet, as if the mysterious force that had ruled the house had disappeared with the shattering of the mirror. She went downstairs, where her mother was making tea in the kitchen. Her mother looked at her with a reassuring smile and asked her if she was feeling better. Sarah felt an unexpected relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She told her mother that everything was fine now. Those disturbing dreams no longer bothered her, and she no longer saw the woman in the mirrors. Several days passed after the incident, and nothing unusual had happened since then. Sarah felt that what had happened was over for good. One day, she and her father decided to get rid of the shattered mirror pieces once and for all. They gathered the shards in an old wooden box, took the box to a distant place outside the city, and buried the mirror underground. After returning home, Sarah felt completely at ease for the first time since she had moved into this house. She no longer saw strange faces in the mirrors, nor heard mysterious voices. She was sure that Layla's soul was freed forever and that the house was just an old house, free of dark secrets. In the end, the family decided to stay in the house and enjoy it without worry. The house regained its warmth and calm, and life returned to normal. Sarah no longer felt any fear, but everything was in its right place.